Well, hello out there, Ricecast family. We are back with another episode of the Ricecast. We're here. The mood is a bit dreary, and there's a couple reasons. It's been a rainy couple of days here in our usually sunny Clearwater, Florida. It's been cold. It's been rainy during these couple of days, and it's appropriate because, Pastor, the Bucs got knocked out of the playoffs.
Yeah, it feels like the weather seems appropriate. We're all mourning here in Tampa for those of our listeners who are outside the area.
Yeah.
But it happens. It happens, and all the games last week came down to the last play.
Right down to the last play.
And unfortunately, the wrong team had the ball in Tampa.
That's the truth. And if I remember right, again, if you've been following along, you did not do the chapel for this last game.
No, I didn't. And that, astute observers have noted that might have been a problem there.
Do you want to throw out your best pitcher in Game 7, one might ask? And
I think they were saving me for the Super Bowl. I don't know. It's possible.
Okay. Well, the nice thing is the arm, you got 7 days to rest up between these. We could just throw you out the whole playoffs if anyone from the Bucs is listening.
I'm not saying the defensive secondary had nothing to do with it in the last 45 seconds.
Cooper Kupp would have been completely blanketed had they had the right chapel.
They had a great year, though, and hey, we have, we don't know what's going to happen with Brady and the team, but hopefully he'll come back. Hopefully we'll have another fun year ahead. But we've had 2 really fun years, so we need to be grateful for that.
That's the truth. That's the truth. I saw the story. He's spending time with his family, and that's where he's going to. And I didn't think that boded real well for us.
No.
Save for his kids saying to him, "You know what, Dad? It'd be great if you were traveling more this coming year. It'd be real."
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I know he loves. It seems like he still loves to play. He's obviously had one of the greatest years, and I think the key, since we're breaking down sports analysis here, is
give it to me.
It's going to be whether he has a good team coming back. If we let some of the best players go and he's got a complete rebuild, I don't see Tom Brady come back for that. But if we can get some of the people around him so he can have a chance to win again, I think he'll be back.
I got to say this just because it connects a couple of things. Kyle Trask, do we think he might be?
Yeah, he's one of the guys on
one?
Yeah, who knows? Of course, Kyle played for the Gators and really flourished there. But we'll see. Every great college quarterback is not a great pro quarterback.
Right.
But Kyle was worth drafting, and where he was, and it'd be nice if he develops and he's been able to watch the best, and we'll see what happens.
We'll see. It was a fun run. We're on to the Bolts. If you are a hockey supporter like me and all our Canadian family out there, shouts out to Vivian, always emailing me about the podcast. We're on to the Bolts. It's Bolts season here in Tampa. But it's been a fun time here at Calvary. We're in this series, kind of this going through these disciple maker tools. I want to say here at the jump, just kind of as a housekeeping thing, this coming Sunday is our Baptism Sunday here at all of our campuses. It is such a special week. If you've not been a part of this at one of our campuses, it is a very, very special Sunday. Everybody looks forward to it every year. And it's where, Pastor, jump in if I don't do this right, but it's where we're going to teach you another tool. And again, all of these tools have been, hopefully it's a benefit to you, but it's also a benefit to someone else. And this is kind of a way you can share your faith with people, but we'll also be presenting the gospel.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of being able to do both. And this is a tool which people around here should be a little familiar with, but it's good to touch it again. And what I would say to people who are like, well, do I need to come in? I think the message around it is certainly different, and I think everyone will gain and learn, even if you know the tool we're going to share. But if you know of people that need to be exposed to the gospel, that is in the sense that you're praying for. We all need to be exposed to the gospel, obviously, but you're praying for them. You want them to really hear it clearly. I think Sunday would be a great day. We hope they hear it clearly every Sunday, but Sunday's going to be one of those days where we just kind of like, that's what we're talking about and trying to make it as clear as possible. So, and people can be baptized. If you need to be baptized, please call our office this week, CalvaryUS/baptism, or just call our office and get registered for it. People are registering every day. If you know of people that are interested, I hope you'll invite them to come.
And you just want to be a part of it. It's so great to see this, just somebody make this decision and be able to take this step all within the same service. It's a special, special week. If you've never been a part of it, if you've been a part of it, you know what I'm talking about. You know how great it is. A lot of people look forward to our beach baptism, which is also special in its own right. Mm-hmm. But this is kind of its own, it's different kind of thing, because there's this opportunity to just respond and then take a step. Great weekend. We hope you can be a part of it.
And since it's in the 40s this weekend, probably a good weekend that we're not at the beach.
Were the roads okay on your way in this morning, Pastor? That's the question.
They were, wet.
It's probably icing over here soon.
Yeah, I don't know that it's icing, but it's pretty messy.
It's cold, so we'll be inside. It's going to be a special week. We hope you can be a part of it. But coming off of this last Sunday, what we talked about this last Sunday was our what we call our oikos map, which that is, in fact, it's a Greek word. It is the name of a Greek yogurt, if some of you are familiar with that, and it's because it's because it means family, right?
Yeah,
Isn't
it means household or family or house. It kind of has a narrow and a broader definition, and I think the narrow textbook definition is household, related by blood or marriage. But the idea of household to household and network to network kind of comes into it. So we kind of broaden it to mean your relational network,
right?
Because even and it is true in the past that sometimes in terms of large households, it might include the people who were what we would think of as employees or staff and so forth. So there's this larger relational network. And what we're saying is start with your network.
Right.
Like ask yourself who are your family, who are your friends, who are, close acquaintances, acquaintances at least, maybe not close friends, but acquaintances that that you're not sure. Start there. Start in the network there. Doesn't mean you're not willing to share the gospel outside your network. We ought to be always ready to have conversations. But the gospel really did spread network to network. Yeah. And as you think about it, that's the way most things spread in human civilization. They spread through networks.
Right.
And what happens in mass communication, we always think that's so powerful, is it usually is reinforcing or clarifying what's going on in this cellular, molecular level in networks. And like you can have a mass campaign for a movie, right? But if it's lousy, word of mouth will kill it. I don't care how much. You can spend all the money you want, 200 million commercials, da-da-da.
Yeah.
As soon as the opening weekend comes and people go home, they tell their neighbors, it was lousy. Don't waste your money.
Right.
Yeah, but the commercial, it doesn't matter. The commercial is lying. The movie was terrible.
Yeah.
And by the third weekend, it's tanked. Yeah. Yeah, well, we spent $1 gazillion on marketing. It doesn't matter. Word of mouth killed you. On the other hand, there are movies that they have very little advertising, like they had a low budget. There's always a surprise breakout movie every year. Back when they had movies, they didn't stream
Back in the day, right?
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And, but there'd be a movie, low budget kind of thing. They had one commercial in Peoria, Illinois or something. But everybody, a couple people went first weekend, and they come back and they tell me, and the next weekend a few more people go. And by a month, the theaters are filled.
Yeah.
Word of mouth. Right. Word of mouth. So, there's such a thing as marketing and mass communication, but the relationships trump everything. So we think the gospel travels across relational bridges, and that's what Oikos is all about.
It's so good. And it's so interesting you brought up that particular thing. I went to film school, Pastor, and they've even talked about there's a scale of when they release a movie. If you see a lot of advertisements for a movie, it's generally an indicator that the movie is not very good.
It's like,
There's actually somebody broke this down, and they said if they know they're sitting on a hit, they will spend a little bit of marketing to get it to people, but then they expect people to take it.
That's
the great example they were using was The Greatest Showman not that long ago. It was like it was marketed, certainly, but it was like a circus musical movie. And then before you knew it, everyone you knew was talking about it.
Everyone said, you got to go see it.
You got to go
I went to see it. My wife's, and look at me. Like, you think I would, my wife said, oh, it's a musical. Really? About people in a circus? Like, oh, thanks. Like, no cars are blowing up? No, it's a musical. But she said, you got to go see it. And I went and saw it, and about 2 minutes in, I was like, oh, my goodness. This is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think we saw it 3 times or something. So, and you tell everyone you know. So it's a perfect example.
Yep.
You got a stinker, then you roll a lot of marketing at it.
You hope everybody goes opening weekend.
The first opening weekend, because after that, we ain't got a chance.
Yep.
And so the gospel gets better as you tell it. So, again, we just have to keep it spreading.
Yeah. So it was a great example. I wanted to kind of dive in on it because we gave everybody, if you were here at our service, and as always, we'll put the link to the sermon in the podcast description if you missed it, because Pastor walked through scripturally story after story in the New Testament of the good news spreading and how it went. There were stories in Acts and stories in the Gospels of this thing spreading, even how the disciples kind of all got to Jesus. It was great. So I'll put that link in there. But I wanted to dive in here on the practical side and even just ask you a couple questions with this, because we gave everyone that came an Oikos map, and what it is, it's very simple. It may sound complicated, but it's not. So just a bunch of circles. You're at the center, and then it's these things. We'll put this link in there too. And then there's just these lines that connect you to your network, and it's just to kind of bring this out. And your challenge was, I think you said 2 of them maybe were believers that you write in this map, and 3 of them were.
Yeah, there's no magic, or 3 and 3, it's just whatever the map is. But right. But the point is, hey, first think about who you know that doesn't know Jesus. But don't rule out people that know Jesus, but maybe they still have a lot of network of people that don't know the Lord. Maybe they just came to know the Lord, or maybe you just know their family, whatever. And so you just think, okay, so it can be both people that know the Lord and don't know the Lord, but then who are they networked with? Mm-hmm. And you start going, like 2 degrees of connection, and there's all kinds of opportunities of people that are in your network that would listen. If you went to them and said, hey, can I pray for you? They wouldn't say no. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't say no. And probably if you went to them and said, hey, could I talk to you or have a quick spiritual conversation? I don't think they would say no. So you could share. You just have to take the opportunity to do it.
Right. And for the person in the next couple of minutes I want to talk to, and I hope this is a benefit to, kind of in the world of Christians, believers, to me, I've seen 2 types of people here. You got one type of person to whom this is just natural as breathing. Mm-hmm. Everybody they bump into, they're talking about Jesus. Somebody bags their groceries at Publix. That person's finding out about Jesus. It's just, there are people that just this comes so naturally.
And there really are people like that.
And and there's another group that, this is something you want to do better at. You're looking for ways to do it. And so, again, for the person who this comes really naturally, you're probably going to listen to the podcast and go like, well, duh. Well, obviously, I do this all the time. To everybody else, you're looking for ways just to grow. Because
it's like 1 to 10. I mean, there are those people, and I'm grateful for them. I'm not one of them, by the way, because I can be very introverted around people I don't know. But I've been around them. Like, I had a friend named Lee. I was traveling with him. Lee, we were overseas, and Lee would witness to everyone. I mean, we would be, listening to a concert on the street, like a street concert. Yeah. That's kind of nice. I turn around, Lee's backstage witnessing to him. I mean, next thing he's got a dinner appointment with a guy. And, he just would do that. Yeah. And he just wasn't afraid. So but I appreciate you saying that. I'm grateful for those guys. Yeah. And they may have what we would think of a spiritual gift of evangelism. But there are a lot of us, and I think if you're out there and it's like, that's hard for me to have those conversations.
Yeah.
I think you're normal. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of where most of us are.
Right. So I want to dive in. How do we do this? How do we put this into practice? And I thought I might just ask you some practical questions there, because even starting with the first challenge, all right, we want to spend some time with people. We've been talking this month, and maybe there's a bit of you that says, wait a second, because this month we've been talking about connecting to God's people, connecting to God's word. So I'm connecting to God's people, and that's important, and that has a place in your life, and it's necessary for growth. But I wanted to ask you, because this is your senior pastor here at our church. You're dealing with our staff most of the time. That's a bunch of believers you're dealing with in that camp. How do you intentionally maybe have some interactions outside and with like an unbeliever?
It's a great question, and it is one of the great challenges of my life, really. I mean, seriously, it's something I pray about often and feel like I don't do enough. I need to do more, because you do have to be very intentional. And the longer, and I said this, I think, Sunday, the longer you're in church, I think it's the only downside, and I don't even know it's a downside, it's just a factor. Mm-hmm. But the longer you're in church, and I've been in church a long time, the longer you're in church, the more your friends are associated with church. Yeah. And now add to that, you work there, and you're surrounded by staff, and my responsibilities are with leaders in our church. So I can be with church people 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And so it takes a challenge. And, some of the things I've tried to do is to be conscious about things like in my neighborhood. I haven't done enough there. I'm not, wouldn't say, hey, I'm the perfect model. But, Cheryl and I have tried to, if there's a party going on, where you just, normally I'm not going there. No, we need to go. We need to go.
Yeah.
Why? Because you need to meet people.
Yeah.
You need to meet people outside. And I'm not really a party person. That's the truth. Of like go to, I'm just not that, But it's like, no, we need to go. Why? Because you're going to meet some people.
Yeah.
I have some relationships in my life that I cultivate, and I mean that in a sincere way. It's not artificial. I love these people. I like these people. I love being around them. And I don't get too descriptive sometimes because people are out there. They're listening. So I'm very careful kind of how I want to say this. But there are relationships and groups of people that maybe God gives you favor with that you just say, hey, I want to lean into that. I want to, text them, call them, thinking about what they may be going through. And you're trying to be sensitive to that in a way that's just not, that's not church ministry. That's me making sure I have some relationships in my life with lost people. I've had pastors say they joined the homeowners group,
Oh, yeah.
One pastor told me I joined the homeowners. I said, why do you go to those meetings? He goes, one reason. I got all the names and addresses, everybody in the neighborhood.
There you go.
I got a little job, but he said but the good news is now I got the name and address, everybody in the neighborhood. And I can go around, I meet them and talk to them. And I know people who the gym is their place, where they really cultivate relationships at a place like a gym. If you work in an environment where there are unsaved people, that's obviously an opportunity. But even there, it has to be cultivated. Otherwise, you just spend the day passing each other in the hall and working.
Right.
So you have to maybe sit down and ask someone how they're doing, how you can pray for them, linger over coffee, and understand. I would just simply say, look for that place in your life where just open your eyes and say, where is there a place where I have some connection with unchristian people, non-Christian people? Now, how am I going to lean into that?
Yeah.
And so, that's what I've done in a couple places.
And that's really, again, we've talked a lot about the purpose of these tools, and that's really the Oikos map is, like you said, there's nothing magical about it. It can be done about a million ways, but it's just to get you to open your eyes and to really see these interactions.
Yep.
Now, another question I think people have is, okay, so I'm doing this. I think you're a great example. Thanks for sharing that you can be kind of introverted, because I think they're thinking, well, then how do I make the jump? How do I have a good conversation, facilitate relationships? I don't want to be the person with a bullhorn in their face yelling at them, but I also, what are some good ways to move it, have a spiritual conversation?
Yeah. It is, first of all, you are who you are. Okay. Some people are more extroverted by nature.
Yeah.
They're fearless and bold. And that's fantastic. They're the people that show up at a party and boom, they're the center of attention.
Right.
And some of us are just kind of measuring it and looking and, people are different. It's okay to be you. It's okay to be you. There are different styles of evangelism. Back in the years ago, there was a book called Becoming a Contagious Christian, and it talked about the different styles of evangelism. Some have a more confrontational style. Some have a very invitational style. Some people are like Matthew. They're a great host. They have parties and get Christians mixed up with non-Christians and see what happens. So I think, first of all, find your own style. Find the style that works best for you. But at the same time, push yourself. It's a little awkward.
Right.
I can't take the awkwardness out of having spiritual conversations, but it's worth it. We all have awkward conversations all the time if we're having healthy relationships. You're going to have some awkward conversations. Hey, look, I got to, So health depends on that. So if you care about people, then you should be willing to have a conversation every once in a while about spiritual things.
Right.
And I think the way I would say to get into it is just to ask questions. Learn to be a good listener more than a good talker. We always work on what am I going to say? What am I going to say? You need to learn what to say. But you do need to learn how to listen. And it doesn't matter who you're with. I think I told a story about Sunday about somebody who moved across the street from a neighbor, and they were clearly from an irreligious background. They were like, "What do I say? What do I say?" Well, you don't say a lot. Just, hey, here's my name. What's yours? Welcome.
Yeah.
At some point, have a cup of coffee. You want to come over, a cup of coffee, or let me, and it's tell me your story. Pastor Tom Hudgens uses that one, and I love it. Tell me your story, and people will tell you, and you got to listen.
Yeah.
It's not the invitation to a debate. It's not like ding, 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 let's have a debate. No, hear their story. And instead of arguing with them, tell me more. Well, how did that happen? Well, why do you think that? Again, you don't have to agree. You don't have to debate. You don't have to win an argument. The Bible says he that wins souls is wise, not he that wins arguments is wise. Winning arguments is fine, but it doesn't win many people sometimes.
Right.
To win people, you got to win hearts. And to win hearts, you got to show people you care. Mm-hmm. And the best way to show people you care is listening to them.
Yeah.
Ask questions about them. And I think, some Christians hear about evangelism, they think it's running in and I gotta tell all this stuff. Like,
right.
Well, maybe you need to learn a little bit first, and maybe you need to listen first. And I'm not saying be hesitant to share. What I'm saying is be strategic in the way you share, because you may need to have a couple of conversations where you do more listening than talking, so that when you do talk, A, you've earned the right to be heard, and 2, you really understand that person. Jesus didn't give us just this, hey, here are 3 points and a closing question.
Right,
this is how you witness to people. He did it different ways at different times. The conversation with the woman at the well is completely different than the conversation with Nicodemus. That's completely different than the conversation with, Zacchaeus, et cetera, et cetera. They were different every time.
Yeah.
Why? Because I think he looked at the people. He could read the situation, and he listened. We do that by listening. I don't have prescient powers to know where a person's come from.
Right.
But I can listen. I can ask them their questions. And it doesn't matter if their value system is 180 degrees different than mine. I can ask them, well, tell me how that happened. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how you got there. Tell me why you think. And so I would say start by asking questions. Ask questions about other people, listen, and then look for, here's what I would say, as you listen, look for the place of brokenness. Because it'll tend to come up. Look for the place where there's a brokenness and a burden that you can kind of speak into, and in a way that's compassionate, and then begin to offer something about the gospel.
That's so good. So much good stuff in there. And, I don't know if this is your experience, and I know you are who you are and you have your position, so it might be a little different for you in some instances. So I'd be curious your thoughts on this. My experience in person, people don't want to debate you. You can think the internet is real life and that everybody wants to argue everything all the time. But interpersonal interactions, I've not encountered as many people that they immediately want to jump to a debate. They immediately want to get into hot topics the second you start talking to someone. You have them over for dinner, a lot of times you're going to chat about normal,
especially if you get in a social situation that's relaxed and you don't come charging in trying to debate. Again, we're not going to get extra points for winning debates.
Right.
Now, there's a time you need to be able to give answers to questions that are asked, but that's different than charging in and attacking and confronting and accusing. There's a time when you can be confrontational, but the times when I've been able to be confrontational with someone and I thought it was needed and effective were times that I knew someone.
Yeah,
and the best one, they already knew I cared. I could say a hard truth, but they knew I cared. And, I can't say they liked it every time, but that you kind of earn the right to speak a confrontational truth.
Yeah.
And you're right. Most people don't want to debate you. They would rather, if they realize you're not trying to debate them.
Right.
And you're not trying to beat them.
Yeah.
They're not, then they will back down. And I just feel like we need to divorce the idea in Christians' mind of, I got to go debate. I got to go win an argument. I got to go convince people. No, the gospel will do its work if you'll share the gospel, which is, this is who Jesus is. This is what he's done for me. And this is what he offers. And, if people walked away from Jesus, he let them. He didn't, he wasn't like hounding anybody. But by sharing the truth has its own magnetic appeal.
And I think you mentioned this on Sunday. You can also kind of alleviate yourself of the pressure of you don't have to save anybody.
It does take the pressure off.
Yeah.
You don't have, it's not like, oh, I got to win somebody. It's like, no, you got to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And there's pressure there. But just share. Share what you know. And then just be sensitive. And if you don't, just to answer questions that people are asking, continue the conversation, keep it going. If you don't know if they want to keep it going, ask them. Ask them if they want to keep it going.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, listen, I was witnessing to a guy in a Uber one time, and I was like, and I prefaced it. I said, hey, I asked a couple of questions about how long he'd been here, where, Then I said, hey, I know this is kind of a crazy question, not silly. I said, this is kind of an off-the-wall question. I said, has anybody ever asked you that I said, how long you been driving? He said, I said, has anybody ever in that 8 years asked you about your own spiritual beliefs? And almost always they go, no. And I go, I know that's kind of a crazy question, but do you have any beliefs? Like, what do you believe? Do you have any, do you think about God? Do you think about spiritual things? And of course, he gave me I've done that a couple of times with Uber drivers, and they always answer. I've never had anybody go, no, I really don't want to talk about that. And I preface it by like, hey, I know this is kind of an off-the-wall question. So that if they said, I really don't want to go there, I say, hey, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
So tell me again about your kids or something.
Yeah, sure.
But most every time if I just ask an opening, like, tell me, do you have any spiritual beliefs? Like, what do you, they'll go, oh, yeah, this, that, and the other. Or they're just something they've heard off a movie, I believe there's a God or something. So, and then you're able to know how to talk to them.
Yeah.
If you listen, like I talked to one guy, he had a religious background, but his father, very religious, went to a church. I'm thinking of a guy in Atlanta that I was witnessing, and he was, but he had been burned by churches. They were like really legalistic and controlling. So my approach to him is completely different than another guy who says, well, I come from a Hindu country and da-da-da-da. And I go, okay. So now my approach is completely different.
Right.
Because I've listened.
Right.
I've listened. These guys are in different camps. So now we can have a conversation. But you don't get there without asking the questions first.
Right. Yeah, that's also good, and it's a good couple of weeks. I'm curious as you start telling those stories, because it's usually in normal conversation, you might say, hey, you introduce yourself, whatever, and people ask what you do fairly, or maybe, depending on the conversation. In general, what is how does that, what is that like sequence for you? You say, I'm a pastor at a church.
It's kind of challenging. I'll be honest with you, it's challenging because I don't know that it opens doors as much as you would think. And maybe I don't do it the right way. But I almost, in fact, a couple of times somebody would ask me what I do, and I wasn't trying to hide anything, but I would say something like, well, I do some teaching or something. Very ambiguous. Sure. And I did that not because I was trying to be deceptive, because I just didn't want to shut down. Because what happens is somebody will be around me and they'll be cussing, they'll be dropping. Hey, what about dead games? Blankety blank ref, and I, So what do you do? And I go, a pastor.
Yeah.
And immediately it's like, pastor. I went to church once. So it's like, but that is a question, and I've heard guys use it like in different ways. But I try to be honest with people. So I don't know that my fear is that kind of shuts down conversations, which is why I say to the people, sometimes you think the pastor's in a better chance to witness. Like I have people like, please come witness to my neighbors.
Yeah.
I can do that. They think, well, you know how to talk, like you know how to say it. But the problem is your neighbors don't trust me.
No,
they don't know me.
Yeah,
and you're like you're bringing in a hitman. Like, okay, try to fix the guy. You know your neighbor. So even though you may say, I don't talk as well as the pastor. I don't know as much Bible as the pastor does. Yeah, but you know your neighbor better than the pastor does.
Right.
And as long as you know the gospel, just say, hey, Joe, what do you have? You guys, do you have any spiritual beliefs? Or, again, another question, how can I pray for you?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Because it gives you a sense, hey, I know this may sound a little weird. I'm a Christian, and I just been praying for you. I wonder, how can I pray for you?
Yeah.
Is there anything I can pray for your family? Or if they talk about it, something, their mother just died, their kids are going through a thing, they've just lost a job. Instead of just going, oh, it's too bad, Bill, hey, can I pray for you? Because I do believe in God, and I believe He answers prayer. And then, in that case, pray for him right there. Pray for him right there.
Yeah.
My son was talking to our neighbor a little while back, and, the neighbor's complaining about, he's getting older, and he's complaining about some of his ailments and various things. And I'm so proud of Stephen. He said, well, let me pray for you right now. And I've known that neighbor. I've talked to that neighbor. But Stephen was able to pray for him, and it was like, well, what are you doing? Somebody wants to pray for you. It's like you listen.
Yeah.
So you open a door, and who knows? Maybe it opens a door. You can always do that. And then even in your prayer, you kind of salt it with the gospel, because it's like you don't preach at them when you're praying. You pray, but you say, "Hey, God, help them right now. I know they're going through a difficult time. God, would you strengthen them? Give them peace." You can pray for them, even if they're not a Christian. You say, "God, would you help them?"
Yeah.
And Lord, would you make yourself known to them? Say it like that. God, would you make yourself known? Would you show them that you care for them? Something like that kind of opens the door. And then what you do is come back later and say, hey, how's that going? Follow back up. Don't forget it. Come back in a week and say, hey, I've been praying for you.
So big.
And then there's maybe the opportunity to say, you know what, I know this is kind of an awkward conversation. That's a great way to start an awkward conversation, by the way. Like, I know this is a little awkward, but I don't think I've ever talked to you about spiritual beliefs or God or anything. And I know that can be a personal thing, but do you have any beliefs about that? And And then you can opportunity say, well, you know what? Can I just tell you what's happened in my life? And, I put my faith in Jesus. This is what happened. And I really, you just share the gospel. And again, you may have to, the further a person is away from God, the more conversation sometimes it takes. And again, God can do anything. One conversation can change the world. I know that. Yeah. But there really is a sense of being further away from God or close. There are people close to taking that step. And they just need somebody to reach out, maybe invite them to church or show them how to pray.
Yeah.
And then there are other people that are further away. And that may take multiple conversations over a period of time where they move from hostility to where they're not quite so hostile to where they're actually open to where they actually respect you, to they actually want to know it. That can be a series of conversations.
Right.
And every conversation in that chain can be an important conversation.
Right.
So you may not come back and say, hey, I led somebody to Christ today.
Yeah.
But you know what? You had a gospel conversation and it moved a person from a, -5 to a -3. It moved them from hostility toward respect or something. That can be a huge win. So we need to celebrate that salvation is the work of God, but we do have to be faithful to have those gospel conversations.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I'm glad you touched on that too, because it can feel like it's kind of a fruitless thing, but there can be good momentum.
Don't ever be discouraged when you've been faithful to God. Don't ever be discouraged. You can always learn.
Yeah.
But this is a Tom Brady line, even though I don't think Tom is a Christian. But, there are no failures. I think he said there are no failures, there's only lessons, which I thought was a pretty good.
Good.
Well, let's say that in spiritual. When it comes to evangelism, I don't know that there are failures, there are only lessons.
Yeah.
So even if you think, I could have said it better, even if you think, I don't think they responded, you were faithful.
Yeah.
To have the conversation, and you can learn from every conversation, maybe just how to make it a little clearer, a little smoother. And the only way to learn is to do it. The only way to learn to fish is to go fishing. No one learns to fish by reading a book.
Right.
Like, I want to learn how to fish. Here's a book.
Yeah.
No one does that.
Yeah.
You want to learn to fish? Hey, come with me, right?
Yeah.
And here's a pole. All right, here's how you do it.
Right.
And you know what? And I'm not a fisherman, but you do a little while, you go, hey, I'm getting a little better at this.
Yeah.
And so go fishing. Go fishing. Have a conversation with somebody in your oikos.
Yeah. It's good. So this last week we were focusing on oikos, and again, as we talk about some of those conversations, this coming Sunday, Baptism Sunday, it's going to be great, and we're also talking through a tool might make you feel a little bit more equipped when it comes time to kind of do what we would call present the gospel, or even talk someone through that. It's called the 3 Circles tool. A lot of people are familiar with it, but we have some things that we have ready for you. If you come to one of our campuses, we have some little stickers and things that can even be a helpful piece for you to walk out with. So we hope you can join us this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. And like I said, as always, we will put the sermon from the Oikos Map sermon, we'll put that in the podcast description. And if you haven't already, wherever you listen to the podcast, leave a review or rate the podcast. That's very helpful. And we'll be back with another episode here very soon.